Welcome to Computopedia, the channel where we learn about computer science. So today we're going to talk about data definition language. So in this video, this is part of a series of databases video, and this is the second one. Here in this video, we're going to talk about create, alter, and drop in databases, of course. So this is the basic theory about the data definition language, or the DDL. We're going to use the MySQL. The SQL itself is the standard query language. And MySQL is a database, or is a collection of objects that are used to store and manipulate data, such as tables, database views, triggers, and stored procedures. And along of these videos, we are going to use MySQL. The second one, the data definition language, or the DDL, is a standard for commands that define the different structures in a databases. So this is the standard. Many of the databases language use this kind of query. The DDL statements are create, modify, and remove database objects such as tables, indexes, and users. This term is also known as data description language in some contexts. So this is just like a different name, different jargon, as it describes the field and records in a database table. The most common DDL statement are create, alter, and drop, which is we are going to talk in this video. The implementation. The present database industry incorporates DDL in any formal language describing data. So really, this one, if whether you're using MySQL or PostgreSQL or just MariaDB or anything else, any other types, they have the same DDL, the same basic query language. However, the DDL itself is just a subset of the SQL, or the structured query language. So this is like the very basic of the language, the very basic of the query. The SQL itself, the structured query language, often uses imperative verbs with normal English, such as sentences, to implement database modifications. And we'll see after this. Hence, the DDL does not show up as a different language in an SQL, because DDL is like the inside of the SQL. So that's not a different language, but does define changes in the database schema. So, however, there may be a little bit different about the usage, but mostly they are the same. The first one, the most common DDL in the SQL, is create. So this command, this query, we have the name of the command, which is the query itself, is create. This create builds a new table and has a predefined syntax. So just like a programming language, we have syntax, and we need to follow them. If you want to use the create, then we have to use that exact syntax. The create statement syntax is create table, create space table, space table name, and then the column definitions, and then the table parameters. For example, we said here create table employee with the table name is the employee with big E. Let's see if databases are not case sensitive. The SQL is not case sensitive, so whether we're using big E or small e, capitalized E or just small e, then that's fine. It's considered as the same. And the column definition, which is we have the employee ID with integer as the data type, and this one is a primary key, so we state here. And then we have first name attributes or column, that's the same. So in the video before this, the first video, we said about the attributes of each entity. So the entity is the row and the attributes is the column in a table. And this is the column definition or the attributes definition. First name, we have characters with the length of maximum 50, and it may be null. We can like just not fill it. And last name, character with maximum length of 75 and not null. So this must be filled. So this is the example. The second one is alter. An alter command modifies an existing database table. So alter is create is the name create is how we need to create and make new one. Alter is we have to modify things. We can modify things. This command can add up additional column, drop existing column, so add and remove, plus and minus, things like that, and even change the data type of a certain columns involved in a database table. So we can change things. We can add, we can delete, and or in this case drop, or we can change those in database table. An alter command syntax is alter, then object type, and then object name parameters. For example, we have alter, we alter a table. The table name is employee, and the parameters we want to add a DOB, then name column DOB with the data type date. So this is the example. The last one is drop. So different from, for example, if we want to alter a table, then we can add column, we can delete column, and we can change the column. But the alter itself is not to create a table itself or to delete a table, because those two are different commands. Just like here we have the drop command. This one is to delete the table or an index or a view. We'll see what's in index, what's in view. And the syntax is very simple. We have drop and the object type and then the object name. For example, here we have drop table, so we are going to drop a table, and then the table name is employee. Now we'll see the example of those three. In this video, it will be split into two. The first one is database as a whole. We want to create, alter, and drop the databases as a whole, and then the tables. So these two are different. The first one that we're going to see, the example, is the database as a whole. So before doing anything else with the data, you need to create a database. A database consists of few tables. Inside those tables, there are also the relationship between them. So database is the one that stores all of them. A database is a container of data. It stores contacts, vendors, customers, or any kind of data you can think of. So any tables, you have 100 tables, 1,000 tables in a database, that's fine. However, you must not combine two databases that didn't have any connection between them. So each table on that databases hopefully are connected from one to each other. If you want to make a different set of tables, different set of entities that have their own connection, then you can just need to make a new database elsewhere. So that's the good practice one. In MySQL, a database is a collection of objects that are used to store and manipulate data such as tables, databases view, triggers, and stored procedure. So each database have their own tables, have their own database views, have their own triggers, and so on. Here are the examples to create a new database via the MySQL program. So this one are using the command line or the terminal if you use the Mac. So the command graphical not the graphical interface, but the command line interface, the CLI. First, you need to log in to the MySQL server using the root. So this is you need to log in to the MySQL first to manipulate that SQL. And then next, if you want to create a database, then you just follow the statement right here. We can see here create, then database, and if not exists, database name. So let's examine the statement over here. Followed by the create database statement is the database name that you want to create. So the database name, we can write here like university or workers, things like that. It is recommended that the database name should be as meaningful as possible. So this is about a database about a worker. Where are the workers? For example, home Sleman worker, for example, or Indonesian worker. So as meaningful, as descriptive as possible, not just table X or table Y. That's not a good practice. The if not exists is an optional clause, and those clause to prevent you from an error creating a new databases that already exist in the database server. So in one database server, there's only one database with the same name. So there's you cannot have few databases that have the same name in one database server. Here are the example. We do create database classic models, and the classic models are the database name. If you want to show the databases of a particular database server, we can use this syntax or this statement, show databases, using S at the end of the syntax, and then the MySQL will show all of your database in that server. So other than classic models, the fourth of those database are generated automatically by the MySQL. So these databases are the requirement of each SQL, each MySQL program. So they will be there. And if you want to select a database, if you're going to use a certain database, we're going to use the use statement, use database name, and then, for example, here use classic model. And if you want to just go out, and then we can just type exit to quit the MySQL program. The second one is about alter database. So we want to alter the database itself. The alter database, not alter table. Yeah, that's two different statements. Alter database statement is used to modify, maintain, or recover an existing database. MySQL provides the alter function that help us incorporate the changes to the already existing database design. For example, we want to modify an existing database, or we add a new table, or we create a view or drop one, then we can use the alter. The third one is the drop, so removing the database. This one is like quite simple. We type the statement, which is drop space database space if exists. The if exists one is also optional, just like in create, and the database name. Here's the example. If we create database, temporary database, TempDB, and then we show the database, and then we can drop the database TempDB. But here we say two different name, and this one is going to be error because the database is not exist. So we're going to drop if this table if exists. If we want to really drop the TempDB, and then we need to write the same name, TempDB. Second is in table. So we want to use those three commands, those three statements in tables. Here, rather than we create database, we are using create table. So if not exists, also are optional, and table name, and then the column list, and then the engine. The first thing that we need to do when we use create is to specify the name of the table to create after create table clause. So the table name, and it must be unique. We are using the optional if not exists to allows you to check if the tables that you are creating are already exist or not in the databases. So this one is to prevent any error. If this is the case, if there is some exist, the same table with the same name, and then the MySQL will ignore the whole statement and will not create any new table. This statement if not exists. It is highly recommended to use the if not exists in every create table statement to avoid an error of creating a new table that already exists. So if we create a new table with the same name that a table that already exists, and then there must be some error, and the error can be quite complicated. So we want to avoid that. The second one, we need to specify a list of columns for the table in the column list section. Columns are separated by commas, so later we'll see the example. The third one, and this is the optional, we need to specify the storage engine of the table in the engine clause. But in practice, we'll be just using InnoDB as the default. So when we are practicing here in this video, we're going just by default. So the following syntax of each column are like this. So we have column name and then data type, and with the length, we can add not null or default value or auto increment. This with the box optional, and you can just not write them. The most important components of the syntax above are the column name. It specifies the name of the column. So each column has a specific data type. One column can only have one data type, so you cannot mix in one column. And the maximum lengths are varchar 255. The not null indicates that the column does not allow null, and the default value is used to specify the default value of the column. For example, if we have default 0, and then the default value of this column are 0. The auto increment indicates that the value of the columns is generated by 1 automatically whenever a new row is inserted into the table. So each table has 1 and only 1 auto increment column. That's auto increment. Then finally, to set a column or set of columns as the primary key, we can use this syntax. And these are the examples. We have create table if not exists, task is the name, and then the task ID is the column name of the first one. It's an auto increment with the data type of integer, and so on until we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 column with the primary key of task ID. So at the end of the columns assignments, we're making the columns. At the end, we're assigning the primary key to task ID. So this example will create these databases. where the yellow over here are the primary key. And this is the size of the maximum size. The second one is alter the alter table. We can modify the structure of the existing tables. It can add column, drop columns, and rename, add primary key, and so on. And to change the structure of the existing tables, we are going to use this statement, alter table, and then table name, and then action. First, we specify the table name of the change, alter table tempdb, for example, or anything else. Later we'll see the example. The second one, this is the list or a set of action that can be applied to the table, that will be applied. An action can be anything, such as adding a new column, adding a primary key, or renaming a table. And the alter table statement can be applied as multiple action in single alter table statement. Actions are separated by a comma. So these are the examples. We want to alter our table task, and then we can just like make new one. So this is, we have creating a new one, new tables, and then we change column alter table task. We can change column task ID to task ID int 11 with not null and auto increment. So we add the auto increment to the task ID. We can do this by alter. To add new column, we use this. So add column complete, and then the type and the null or not null, and then we put that column after description. So we have here a description, and then we put the column complete after the description. And then we can as well drop the column in alter. So this is the examples, changing the table name, and that's the alter. Lastly, we're going to talk about the drop. So it removes the existing tables. You can use the MySQL drop table statement. In addition, it's try to remove a table that does not exist in table. For demonstration, the show warning statement. So the show warning statement if are done if there is non-existent tables. So in this example, and that is all. So we'll learn about create, alter, and drop on the database and on the table level. So that's for this video. We're going next talk about the data manipulation language on the third video. So see you on the third video, and goodbye.